We process about 200 claims a month. We get about 100, sometimes we get 50 to 100 sexual assault claims a week.
Wow.
And we get about 150, some between 100 and 150 crime victims a month. So we have a big workload of applications for that.
Hey, welcome everyone to another 10-8 podcast coming from the Department of Public Safety. We want to make sure and go ahead and mention that if you're actually watching or listening to us today, please hit the like and subscribe button. So we're really excited today. Part of our goal is to educate our law enforcement officers across the state through these podcasts, through different topics. So we're very excited today to discuss the Crime Victims Reparation Board and everything you guys do. So if you just take the opportunity, introduce yourself. You're part of the Department of Public Safety's executive team, and you lead one of our divisions. So introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. First, I want to start by thanking you for the invitation. I'm
Absolutely.
really glad that I'm here to talk about the program that has really been very fun for me, because I started as a victim advocate in 2005, and I was assisting immigrant victims and other victims from all over the state, and this was the first resource that I used. So now it feels like full circle now that I'm the administrator of the program since July 2023.
So 20 years in the program or in the services. of
20,
helping
yeah,
victims.
20, actually 20 plus. I started in January, so going on 20 and a half years.
Well, that's fantastic. So tell us a little bit about your staff. How large is your staff?
So our staff right now, we just lost 2 people. So I'm hiring an admin position and an investigator, but usually it's 10 of us. The administrator, 5 investigators, 1 fiscal person, 2 extra help, and 1 administrator.
Yeah, so
Administration.
pretty big workload because you're carrying a statewide workload, correct?
Correct,
And
yeah.
So have to be pretty efficient at what you do, huh?
We try. It's
We
like a
try,
never.
though.
It feels like a revolving door or a conveyor belt. It
Yeah.
never stops.
So what we want to do today, if you're all right with that, we've got some questions. We just want to get this information out in an accurate way and spend some time with you today to ask some questions, get some answers, and make sure our law enforcement community knows what resources are available.
Great.
All right.
You know, I'm excited that you're here today, and we know you got some good information for us. Can you tell us what the Crime Victims Reparation Board is?
Yes, the Crime Victim Reparations Board is a service for crime victims, either victims of violent crimes or sexual assault, and we provide the reparations for their victimization. But there's some, once we get into it, I will break it down into what are the guidelines and the kind of crimes that we cover. But basically, we provide reparations for victims of crime.
Okay. We mentioned that it's a board. How is the board comprised of what individuals?
So we have 5 board members. Actually, we're down 1 now. But the board is 5 board members, 2 attorneys, and right now 3 advocates. And they are an external board. Sometimes people get it confused, like if it's a board, like it will be a nonprofit, but they are not. So they don't have any decision making on salaries or hiring positions. They are strictly just to approve or deny the claims that we present monthly. So it is, like I said, composed of 2 attorneys and 3 advocates.
Okay. If you will, go into explaining to us how an individual would become eligible for crime reparations and how would they apply for it?
Okay, so I think it's important to really tell you how the program is what are the components of the program? Under the Crime Victims Reparations Board, we have 2 major programs: the sexual assault program and the crime victims. If I may, I start with the sexual assault, which is the easiest to explain. Basically, it's no questions asked, and the relationship with us is the provider. So in this case, if there is a child abuse victim, victim of sexual assault, or an adult rape victim, they seek maybe assistance at a child advocacy center after a hotline report was done, or an adult victim goes to either a hospital, an ER, or a rape crisis center, and then the provider, in this case the hospital or the advocacy center, or the rape crisis center send the bill to us for the medical exam and the labs or whatever was done on the victim, without the requirement of the victim to report the crime.
Okay.
So when they sell us the bill and send us the bill and the labs, our job is to just process that and then, of course, present it to the board for an award. Do you have questions about
Yes,
that?
go ahead.
And
Just
then
continue.
for the crime victims, it's a little bit more in depth. Let me go back a little bit. On the sexual assault, there is the restriction that a provider has 3 months or 90 days to submit a bill to us.
Okay.
Otherwise, we cannot approve it. And one other restriction is that if the crime didn't happen here in Arkansas, because we are the Arkansas crime victims, so if the victimization happened in another state, then we cannot. Of
cannot.
course, we're limited to, we cannot award that. Going now to the crime victims.
Before you go into
Sure.
that, let me ask this question. Do you all have offices or services available to all 75 counties?
We serve the entire state.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and just to give you an idea, the 5 investigators in our office and myself with the 2 extra help, we process about 200 claims a month. We get about 100, sometimes we get 50 to 100 sexual assault claims a week.
Wow.
And we get about 150, between 100 and 150 crime victims a month. So we have a big workload of applications for that. So we try to do our best to process them as fast as we can.
Yeah.
However, like I was explaining, so I think it's important. So provider, the relationship with us is for the sexual assault program is the provider, and there's no requirement to report the crime. Even though we know that children sometimes don't have that option because they disclosed or somebody saw something or there was an outcry and then the child abuse hotline reported and the child had no say into reporting or not. With the crime victims, however, there is the requirement that the crime has to be reported.
Okay.
In this case, if we have somebody that is a victim of homicide, we know that the victim, of course, can report, but the family, and then they also have to cooperate with the police or the authorities. It's one of the requirements. And also there's they have a year to submit an application with us. And then, like I was saying, with the sexual assault, there's no questions asked. With the crime victims, there's a lot of questions.
Okay.
Because
Yeah, so let me ask you a question. So you said it had to be reported, right?
Yes.
So what if the agency or the prosecutor's office chooses not to investigate or charge in that particular incident?
So there is no, as far as our program goes, we know that not all the cases go to prosecution, right?
Okay.
That not everybody gets convicted.
Yeah, I think that's a really important fact because our victims think that, it may have to be prosecuted or investigated
Correct.
to the fullest extent.
We don't live in a perfect world, right? So
Naturally.
we hope that even on child abuse cases or adult cases or any case, we will hope that, victim reports, there's some justice and then somebody
Yeah.
gets conviction. But so for our program, that is the one thing that we don't focus on.
Okay.
But if you are the victim and you say your brother got murdered or somebody in your family got victimized, we do expect, because we do check, that's one of the things that we do, we do expect the victim or the survivor or the family that if the detective picks up the phone and said, hey, I need to talk to you about what happened to your brother, that you're going to assist the police.
So they have to cooperate
So
within
they
the-
have to
Yeah.
cooperate with the
Okay.
police, because we do have a section that if we learn that there was lack of cooperation, then that claim might not be awarded. And I don't decide that, by the way. That's another thing important for me to mention. As the administrator, I pretty much manage the office and the claims and my board, but I don't have any decision making on that. That's why we submit those forms to the board. Another thing, going back to the investigative process, there is a lot of components that we need for every claim. So if we have a homicide, for example, the victim or the family, the caregiver submits that application with us. We prefer online because sometimes people will print them and then send them, and we end up with 3 applications because they didn't think that they submitted it. And then that's when the process starts. It gets assigned to an investigator. The investigator then has to send an acknowledgement to that victim or victim family to say, we received your application, and by the way, we need these and these and these, or we are pending these and these and these documents, because the application has whatever reparations the family is seeking. So in this case, in one case, they might be seeking reparations to pay for the funeral expenses, or to pay for medical bills, or to pay for dental work. So whatever they're seeking is marked in the application, and then that's what we would need. I can tell you that sadly, to me, it's very sad, after interviewing children for 11 years and working child abuse for a long time, I had no idea all the homicides that we see. So part of our, like pretty much 50% of our budget goes to pay funeral expenses, and the other 50% goes to pay sexual assaults. And also, I know you didn't ask me that, but it's very sad to me also, as an advocate at heart, to see that we're losing a lot of our youth, because most of the homicides that we process, which probably is nothing new to you, they're people under 40.
Yes, really.
So we have a lot of teenagers that are dying on shootings and stuff. 17-year-olds, 13-year-old, 25-year-old, a lot of young people. But that was aside. No, but anyway, so whatever the reparation, then let's say if it's a homicide, one of the requirements is that we would contact the funeral home to get the death certificate and the coroner's report, because another requirement is that if it's a homicide or a murder victim, the death certificate has to say homicide.
Yeah. Right.
You know, because we don't pay. One thing that our program does not pay under the crime victims is expenses that are not part of a criminal case. So sometimes people submit an application and they want us to pay for their car that got broken into or something. So it has to be a victim of a violent
So
crime.
let me ask you this. You talked about sexual assaults and you talked about homicides. Are there any other crimes that a person can be a victim of?
Yeah, so
that you-
stabbings,
Okay.
domestic violence,
Okay.
any violent crime, victims of stalking that ended up maybe dying for that victimization. So anything that you can think of that is a violent crime.
Okay.
Okay, speaking of violent crimes, I was looking at your website and I noticed that if the victim is part of a violent crime, they would not be eligible. Can you tell me more about that?
So what's the question?
If the victim themselves had committed a violent crime.
Oh, yes. So one of the restrictions is that, well, it depends on the kind of crime. The violent crime, as long as it's not an injurious felony conviction. So they can be convicted maybe of some kind of crime, but as long as it's not an injurious felony conviction.
Okay.
So that's what
They might have a battery third
They might-
misdemeanor charge and
Correct.
still be eligible.
Correct. As long as it's not an injurious felony. So that's why part of our investigative process also is to run ACIC to see if there's anything of that, because that's how we kind of screen them out if there's anything in their background.
Right.
Now, one thing about our program is just like with any other programs, if somebody gets denied by the board because of felony conviction or for lack of cooperation or maybe collateral sources, which we haven't talked about that, they have the chance to appeal. And we meet with our board every other month for appeal hearings, and we have some claimants that they have won their case, and then the case gets overturned. Talking about collateral sources, that's another thing. So somebody saying or requesting, I want help with funeral expenses, but then we learn with the investigative process that maybe they got a collateral from life insurance or medical insurance or something, then we don't, unfortunately, we are restricted and we cannot provide reparations because they had another source. We are the last resource.
Okay.
So if there's something
That's
else
a good point. That's a good point.
Yes,
to
because
make.
sometimes people call us and said, "Well, where is my money?" Or I thought I was going to get these $10,000, or and I was like, "No, that's not the way it works." You know, we pay certain amounts, which I can explain in a little bit. Certain amounts, or we have caps, but just because somebody submitted an application first, that doesn't mean that they're going to get an award, because we don't know what the investigation is going to reveal. And then the other thing is that if we find out that there's a collateral source, then we might, even if they are eligible, we might not give them more money than the one that they already just received.
You mentioned caps, financial caps is what
Yes.
you were talking about. What are the financial caps that you have?
So for the sexual assault, we pay. Our caps are kind of low, but they can cover enough of the expenses. We pay $350 for facility fee. The facility fee covers pretty much the medication and the visit to the SANE, which is the sexual assault nurse examiner, or the child abuse doctor, pediatrician. We also pay $350 for the medical exam. Up to, because they're more expensive, but we pay up to $350, which is the forensic exam and the collection of evidence that goes to the crime lab, and then $200 for labs. That doesn't mean that if a victim or a child victim has to go back to a CAC for another exam, for more labs, then those can be paid through a crime victims application, not through the sexual assault. The sexual assault program only pays for one, but then if there's other expenses, they can be covered with the crime victims application. And then we pay, that's all the sexual assault. On the crime victims, our caps are, let me see if I remember all them all. A regular claim can be payable up to $10,000.
Okay.
And that can be for funeral expenses, medical expenses. If the medical facility, if our $10,000 can cover up to their 65% of their expenses, that should be considered payment in full. However, the hospital might say, well, that doesn't cover all my expenses. I'm going to go after the victim, which in the sexual assault case, they can't do that. Whatever we pay the provider, it has to be settled, and they cannot go
That's
after
it.
the victim.
Okay.
We also pay for catastrophic under crime victims. We pay up to $25,000. And sometimes it sounds like a lot of money, but it doesn't really make a dent when you have somebody that maybe got shot in the face, lost half their face, and their surgeries and medical expenses are in the $300,000, $250,000. And then we pay up to $3,000 for crime scene cleanup, and and up to $7,500 for funeral expenses.
Okay. So for our law enforcement officers that may be listening and want this kind of information, is this something that they can call you all for the family, or do the family have to call themselves for your service?
So both. The way we get the referral sometimes are self-refer, and advocates from Little Rock Police Departments or any other police department in the state sheriff's office, they're pretty good about sending them our link so they can fill out the application themselves, because like I said, it's not the provider, it's the victim who has to do that. Sometimes the funeral homes also assist the families on doing that.
Okay.
But we have people that they don't have access to a computer, or they don't know how to do it. They're welcome to come to our office, and I have really pretty much instructed all the team that everybody has to have some knowledge on victimology, and everybody has to have customer service. Being an advocate and forensic interviewing for years and being in the trenches, I don't feel comfortable with somebody just fill out the application. If you have questions, come and see us, and we would help you. And we actually did that at Fort Dykes with the shooting. We went a couple of times and we met with people so we can assist them on filling out the application. So and they can call us, they can email us, and they can reach out to us through the website as well.
Okay. You spoke on this a little bit, and I want to circle back to this. When it comes down to an individual that has been a victim of a crime, but no suspect has been arrested for that crime, or charges filed, do you all still go forward with the crime reparation?
Yes. Okay. So we complete the investigation, and whatever information we get from the detectives or from the law enforcement agency, that's what we provide to the board. And we can say, for example, John Doe was shot and killed by X person, no arrest has been made, or the investigation is still ongoing, or something like that. The board can still make a decision because we are done. We are not the prosecutor, we are not the law enforcement agency. All we need, and if we have all the documentation that we need to complete that claim, there's no reason for us to hold it not process
Yeah, I
it.
really appreciate that fact, because if you're waiting on adjudication, then
Correct.
it could be
Yeah.
12, 18 months. So
Yes.
If not longer.
yeah, or not longer. So that's a great aspect.
What is the turnaround? So I apply today, I meet all the criteria, and I'm going to pay for some funeral expenses. What is the turnaround from the time a victim's family can get it submitted, approved, and then they can receive the funding they need?
Well, that's a very good question. Unfortunately, because of the number of applications that we receive, like I was explaining before, we cannot process them in less than 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
And also because, as you know, since we get a lot of a lot of homicides, sometimes also waiting for the coroner's report
Sure.
and the and the death certificate that might be one ready that says pending. Even if their certificate says pending, we cannot finish the
Yeah,
claim.
it's
It
gotta-
has to say
gotta be
it
labeled
has
as a
to
homicide.
homicide.
Yeah.
So sometimes, and I think one thing that I think is important, which is not new to law enforcement, but new to a lot of people that may be watching or the community, that is not the CSI 1 hour process, right?
Sure.
That we hope to that everything was just like send me the application and I send you a check and we can. So it's about 6 to 8 months, but it is also because it's a waiting game. So if I have an investigator that is working on a homicide, we make sometimes 1, 2, 3 attempts to get an investigator to call us back and say, hey, give me the outcome on this. And sometimes they don't call back. Sometimes they don't send us the form because we have forms for everything. So we have a form that is called the law form, and we send them the law form, and it's just 5 questions. Did the victim cooperated? If they can pretty much vouch for or send us the police report. And sometimes it's a waiting game. And it's a waiting game in so many ways. So it's sometimes also that it's not that we want to keep them staggered. It's just that we have so many, and the ones that we can move along, those are the ones that we're moving along. And other ones, we have special drawers where you can say second attempt, third attempt.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's like, let me call them. And I
get
hate
it.
to do that.
I get it. So as the application begins, and so I think it's important, we got to let our listeners know, what website do they go to?
So they can go to the Department of Public Safety website, actually.
Perfect.
And if they click, there's like 8 blocks at the bottom.
Yes, ma'am.
They will find the CVRB or the Crime Victims
Wonderful.
Reparations Vault. They click there, and then they would see your applications, actually annual report, all the information that they need about us.
Do the victims or the victim's family, do they need to have copies of things? For example, do they need to provide and scan a copy of the police report or any other documentation they have, or is that something your team does?
So yes and no.
Gotcha.
I like I said, I'm a big proponent of helping victims to be if they can, right? Because we
Yeah.
don't know their mental state or
course.
the things that can happen. But thinking as an advocate, when I was working with a lot of families, they're very resourceful. So sometimes I tell my team, don't wait on the police if they have one. Well, I don't want to hurt their feelings. You won't hurt their feelings. I think it's worse for them to be waiting. I'm waiting on the detective. I'm waiting than if they said, do you happen to have a copy of that report? And sometimes it depends how you present the question
get
to the victims, to the survivors. So every investigator in my office, they all have the same protocol, and we all do the same. But some of them may prefer to wait. Some of them may prefer. Me, working with advocates, like I said, as an advocate, I said victims would be very helpful if you
Sure.
allow them to be. So, or if they are willing to do that. So sometimes it's both. Sometimes the victims, if they are submitting an application, they already uploaded the report.
Wonderful.
Because when they submit an application online, they're able to upload all those, whatever they have. If they already have medical bills or something, they already uploaded them. So for us, maybe 2 or 3 things more to get. So, which is important to mention, because sometimes also advocates or other victim assistance providers, they tell the victim, submit this application, and we cannot process it if there's nothing to pay.
Correct.
So we need to have at least one invoice,
Sure.
something to we know where. So sometimes we finish processing a claim, and we put it closing or pending, because in a year we didn't hear from anybody, we didn't get any bills, so that claim is just like in limbo. But if they have something to submit, either the report or some invoice, they can go ahead and upload it.
Wonderful.
You mentioned that if somebody was struggling with the online version, that they could come to you and get assistance. Would that be here at the State Police Plaza office, or do you go to other courthouses? and
I
things?
love that I always have two answers. So both. So if they are in Pulaski County and they have reliable transportation, or they have somebody that can bring them to the office, yeah, stop by and see us. And we do that for trainings as well. So if somebody is in need, maybe they don't have transportation, or there's a language barrier, or maybe they're in another county, they just need to let us know, and we will make an effort to go to them.
You did that in Fordyce, correct?
Yes,
you
we
guys
did.
actually drove down to
Yeah,
Fordyce and
we-
met with the victims there. So.
Correct, yeah. So I want all my team to be advocates themselves, and this is one of my things that when I came, they have little knowledge of victimology. And with me seeing, homicide, rapes, and other things that always in the streets, I was like, so I'm bringing trainings and I'm getting them trained in other things, because we cannot make decisions on people's lives if you don't know how victimology looks like.
Yeah, I love your passion for this, and I think the fact that you and your staff are well versed on both sides of the house are very important. But your passion to help victims is absolutely amazing. And you talked about
Thank
the
you.
educational portion of it. We're going to make sure that we attach a PowerPoint presentation that you do and put together for educational purposes on the end of the podcast. So that'll be fantastic for our listeners. Anything else you'd like to wrap up with?
I just want to invite everybody to come visit us. If they need any materials, we have brochures and cards that are designed for law enforcement to pass to victims. And if we can do anything in person to be one-on-one, that would be great.
Yeah, love it.
I've got one last question, if I could. You mentioned earlier you have 2 vacant positions and a board member's position available. Where would one who is interested and has a passion like you have, how do they even find that? Where would they apply for the job or to be on the board?
So for the board position, it has to go to the boards and commissions under the governor's website.
Very good.
It just became vacant. And I think it's okay to say because it's official now.
Okay.
And then for the administrative position and for the investigator or eligibility specialist, it already closed. I'm about to start interviewing, and it was posted under the DPS search.
Well, great. You got applicants. That's fantastic.
Yes, so we're going to start interviewing next week.
Well, fantastic.
Good. Awesome.
So, from all of us here at the 10-8 podcast, what a great opportunity
Very
to
much so.
push some educational information out there, have a discussion that really helps our law enforcement officers, helps our victims out there understand what state resources are available. So we appreciate that. Once again, as you watch the podcast, click like and subscribe, or find us at the DPS website. We're under the CLES, the Commission on Law Enforcement Standards and Training, under that Department of Public Safety site. And so we want to make sure that we thank the governor for allowing us to serve in these positions of leadership for the state. Thank you for serving in yours.
Thank you.
The Attorney General for the wonderful studio he built out here for us to do these podcasts, and of course Colonel Hager and our Secretary Hager for his leadership in the Department of Public Safety. So for Jason, Kelvin, Barbara, and Chris, thank you very much for listening today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.